The story actually begins like I had a surgery. I had died once when I was 3, but I don't remember that. I had to have open heart surgery. I was born with a called a bicuspid valve, um, where there are 3 folds in it. But mine only had 2, so it was anyway. It I had a murmur and they caught it, but I kind of passed out in my backyard, and my brother went and got my mom and carted me off to the hospital, and I had open heart surgery, and at the age of 3, and but that time all they did was they patched it up. They didn't really fix the problem. When I was 16, that little patch was failing, and I had another surgery. This time they put a pig valve in. No. That was a human valve, a cadaver valve. And that one failed by the time I was 30. I started really struggling when I was in my early 20s. When I was 25, I had my first child. At the age of 30, I could hear my heart beating. Just I had a pillow over my head. I could hear my heart beating. I says, that shouldn't be that way, right? I go to my doctor and I tell him. He puts his stethoscope up to my heart. He goes, "Oh my God!" And I said, "I don't think you're supposed to be saying that. And if you are, chances are it's not good." Well, that valve that they gave me failed, and I had to have another open heart surgery. This time they gave me a pig valve, and you'd think that would be enough to get me to stop doing what I was doing, but it just at that time I felt like I was invincible. Um, Nothing could kill me, nothing can beat me. I was working at this machine shop, no heat treat plant, and I hit my right arm, like big, huge pieces of metal. I go to my doctor and he gives me Percocet, and I swear on the bottle it said take one every 4 hours, but in my mind it said take 4 every hour and sell half of them to your buddies. But that's just to show you the desperation that I was in, the dark place that I was in. I turned to heroin to forget about another drug that was controlling my life. I'm checking myself in and out of, getting myself pink slipped, checking myself in the hospital. I'm trying to get treatment. I'm trying to detox. And I remember it was right around, usually around this time of the year, I start feeling that because it was springtime that all this happened. It was in June of 2016. Um, my hometown basketball team was in the championship at the time, and I'm a lifelong Cleveland sports fan. I'll get to that in a minute. Here's how that day went. I was in this really, really dark place, and this was my moment of clarity. This was my prayer. Now I'm gonna bleep them out myself, but I looked up at this. I was cutting my buddy's front yard with this really big lawnmower, and I remember shutting that thing off and just having this moment of honesty with myself. And I looked up at the sky and I said, "You MFer, if this is how you want me to live, just take me, because I'm tired. I can't live like this anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore. If this is how I'm supposed to live, just kill me." And and then I go, "But if you want me to live another way, let me know. Give me a clear sign. Like, I need to know that this is coming from you and not like some figment of any imagination. It's not somebody saying something to me in passing and I can say, oh, well, that's the message I've been looking for. No, I basically need a baseball bat up to the side of the head. Oh, and then I turned on the mower and I just kept going about my business, sick as hell. I go back home. I remember walking into my house. I could barely walk. Like, and I was so sick, and I was just like, oh, I feel like I'm gonna die. So I remember waking up that night. I couldn't breathe, and something told me that I needed to go to the hospital. The ambulance came and got me, and I went to the hospital. And I was in the ER, and I had told them I was throwing up and all this other stuff. And well, what they were doing, they were putting a PICC line in my neck. Um, and I remember they had this thing over my face, and that there, this guy that one of the aides, the nurse's aide, I had a friend that worked. He was a nurse that worked at that hospital, and it was his aide. My friend wasn't there, but his aide was, and he knew me because he had to babysit me a couple of times. And I remember holding his hand saying, I don't want to die alone. Please just, he's like, oh, you're not going to die. I go, yes, I am. I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die. I'm like, this just, it's it. Chalk it up. Tell everybody I gave a good shot. And then I heard bloodstream infection. Now, being a heart patient, I knew what that meant. Now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm toast. And this was in the ER at a completely different hospital. And then they gave me something, and I could hear my ex's voice from outside the door, but I couldn't see anything. And I could hear her talking. And then I just remember feeling this complete powerlessness. Like I was falling backwards. And I remember trying to grab on to the bed rail. And I was scared. Like, I'm like, oh my God. This is it. I'm trying to grab onto the bed rail, but I can't even move. Nothing can stop me from this fall. And then I heard this, it was like a metallic noise. And then I'm in this line. And I'm in this line. I'm in a really long ass line. And I wasn't me per se. It was not me, but I knew I was me. Mm-hmm. And there's this line, and it's going all the way to eternity. And I'm a natural just jokester. And I tapped the guy in front of me on the shoulder, and I says, well, looks like we're going to be here for a while. But I remember, and he laughed, but I couldn't see his face. I couldn't see anybody else's faces. And I'll get to that in a second, because that's really important. I remember I wasn't in any pain. I was completely comfortable. I was just shugging and jiving with this guy that was next to me. And it was just at peace. No light, just eternity, except this one person, not too far ahead of me. Young black girl. She had pigtails. For some odd reason, she poked her head out the line. She looked at me and she smiled and went like that. And I'm like, oh, look at that. You know, such a beautiful little girl. You know, look at that smile. And it warmed my heart. Yeah. And she went like that. And it was just weird. Like, out of all that, it's the only person's face I saw. So next thing you know, I'm looking around, and I look to my left and look to my right, and I go, what's this to my left? There's this bright light. Now, this light came over me, and it was warm. It was like happiness. Like I cannot explain. I can't duplicate the light either. Mm-hmm. It's an unearthly light. So bright, so warm, almost like you want to be there. And this just this really good feeling came over me. And I felt a shove on my chest. And I woke up, and this guy's walking in the room, and he goes, "Ray." And I go, "Huh?" He says, "You know who I am?" And I go, "A doctor?" He said, "No, Ray, listen to the sound of my voice." It was my brother. You know, he was praying for me. He had like, I don't know how many people on he played this game, and he had like this chat room, and tons of people were praying. And and I wake up, and I just remember him asking me if I was done. There were several things that he asked me if I was done with, and I said, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm done." I didn't get any information because literally 2 seconds ago, I was talking to a living human being saying I was going to die. And here I am. It basically, he was waking me up because I was going to be gone. That's what the doctor was telling me. 3 weeks went by. I was in a coma all that time. I had a clot formed in my right arm, and it traveled up through my main arteries, ricocheted off of my heart, and then went down to my left groin, lodged itself in there. So I went from being in total pain to at peace, with somebody waving at me and a funny guy laughing at my jokes, and back into excruciating pain. And but I remember I was okay with that. And my brother leaned over and I says, "Hey man, I gotta tell you something." I says, "I think I saw God." So a while went by before, I have to say, not once was I around a TV at all. No newscasts, very little, interaction with anybody that wasn't family. No social media, no phone calls, no nothing. They had me literally on lockdown. Then I decided to turn the TV on. I don't know why, but I decided to turn the TV on, and there it is. It's the news. Body of a young girl found. And it was her. And I went, "What?" I go, that's her. And that's when I realized, like, wow, that was real. That's how I do God's work. By talking to you, sharing this story, and just the hopes that one person hears it, that, and it touches their lives, and it helps that person, not makes them, but helps them get to the other side of what demons or problems this person is dealing with. Then it makes it all worthwhile. So,
and what do you want them to hear?
That an addict, and any addict, can get clean, lose his desire to use, and find a new way of life.
I guess at that time I was like, how old was I think like 17, 18. Like, it was a Holy Week. And we have a saying, superstitious belief in this country, that if it's a Good Friday, you're not even supposed to go out at all because you're prone to accidents. But I never really believed in that thing. So I decided to go out around the village using this motorbike. And I even had a friend of me who was behind me riding with me at that time. And then, for some unknown reason, there was a construction in the other street. And I was really surprised because it wasn't yesterday. And suddenly there was construction going on. And then before I knew it, that's it. I lost consciousness. I mean, my friend who was a witness later on told me that the bike really went around like that, and it fell on the road. I never felt any pain, nothing at all. I didn't even realize that I had an accident. I didn't know that if you fall like that, you won't even feel anything. I mean, I didn't feel anything. I just felt like I was somewhere else. I didn't know what was going on. I was just somewhere else. So there was a person beside me, and I asked her, and I believe it was a woman, and I said, "Where am I? What happened to me?" And she went, "Oh, didn't you know you died?" I said, "Really?" I was really scared. I was like, "Really?" And she said, "You had an accident," and I couldn't remember which accident or what. And she said that, you you probably don't know anything about it, but you just had an accident. You're not living anymore. You're dead. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was like, oh, okay, sure, you know. Then suddenly I saw, I mean, it's like down there, I was looking and there was a coffin, and my parents were there. And then what's so surprising was that this is really strange for me. But then again, because of my background, I mean, being, well, now I accepted being a psychic medium, was I saw myself wearing this very long, really very long white gown. I mean, we don't wear that here in this country. It's a stripping gown. I mean, but I was just surprised I was wearing that. And that was what I was wearing inside the coffin. And I was looking at myself in the coffin. Wow, that stripping gown. I never used that. And then I was looking around and just my parents, and then um sorry, I saw my mom crying. So I was like, she was crying a lot, and I didn't even know. And I was just looking. And the funny thing about it is, this is the hardest thing, is to actually explain the whole thing. I mean, words will not come. I mean, close to capture the feelings, but I was in a place like there was so much heat. I mean, I wasn't scared. I felt like it was so calm, so quiet. Like I just wanted to be in that place. I mean, I saw myself sure, but I didn't even believe I was dead. I was just looking at myself down there, but there was nothing inside of me that says, okay, I want to go back, or anything like that. The total peace, the total calm was there, and I was not in the least a bit afraid or anxious. I mean, I felt the feeling is like, I mean, when you go to the pool and you go under the water, you feel this sense of calmness around you, and I really love it. I just like being there, and I don't know. It's kind of strange, but I saw my mom crying a lot, and I felt bad for her. But I don't know if this is what you feel. Well, can I say this thing, because as a medium, sometimes there were times I've spoken with the spirits who passed away. Like they always say, not all of them, they always say when you're on the other side, sometimes you just don't want to go back to Earth anymore. I mean, you just like to be there. And then I heard a voice behind me. It was a man, and it doesn't. It never looked. I didn't really see the face, but I saw the he was wearing this white, at the same time white gown, and long hair. And he told me, like, this is not yet the time for you to be here. You are going back. I said, I'm not going back. He said, no, it's not your time. You are going back. And I I don't know who is that, but it's definitely not like a family, an ancestor, or old friends who passed away, but it seems like somebody spiritual or being. It's like there was so much light on him. There was like I felt so much love and joy, like seeing him there. And he kept on saying to me that there will be a time when you will be back here, but this is not the time. And when he said that, I just found myself in our home. I don't know how I was able to go back, but my mom later on told me that there was so much blood, and I was back in my physical being. And I never really talk about it anymore because nobody really would believe me. Not until I went to the Facebook group and people were talking about it and I realized this is true. It's happening. And the funny thing is that white sleeping gown, I bought that when I was in the States. I used that same sleeping gown like um, 10 years after it happened. It's really strange because that was what I was wearing in the coffin. And then 7 years from that time, or 7 years, I moved to US and I got the same gown. So there you go.
It was 2006. I was playing Mr. Mom Monday through Friday. My wife traveled for work, so she would fly out on a Monday, and I was doing my best to be Mr. Mom. Was also going to nursing school, and my wife and I had a company together, so was keeping myself pretty busy, and got bronchitis and ignored it. Tried to power through, and then that became pneumonia, and tried to power through, and was at a doc in the box, and they did an oxygen sat on me and did a lung x-ray, and he's like, you've got whiteout in all 5 lobes, which means you've got so much crap in your lungs that it's actually reflecting back on the x-ray. So he's like, you should probably go to the doctor. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to the doctor. And instead I went home. Kind of stubborn, really stubborn, I guess, maybe. So I went home, got up the next day, and went to see my endocrinologist or my diabetes doctor. And she looked at me, and what I didn't know was that her husband was an infectious disease doc. So she looked at me and she says, I'm calling my husband. And I'm like, why are you calling your husband? I don't even know you, lady. So I was, quote unquote, directly admitted to the hospital. So again, it was, we've already sent your information over. They will be expecting you. Go directly. Do not pass go. So I went home and had myself a proper English breakfast, had my super strong coffee because I had worked in a hospital, not as a nurse at that point, but I worked in a hospital long enough to know that what the patients got as coffee was kind of like coffee or at least warm water with a brown crayon dipped in it. So I wanted my good meal. Now, when I drove home or when I drove to the hospital, I remember leaving and I remember getting there, but I don't remember anything in between. I remember driving around looking for a place to park, and then the next thing I know, I'm in the emergency room. And it was like consciousness was kind of like a stone skipping on the water. And I just had like this little snippets of, yep, I remember that, but then I had no idea how I got to the next thing. The next memory I have was I'm sitting in the emergency room. The doctor has a piece of paper in front of me and he's handing me a pen. My wife at the time was there. I have no idea how she got there or who called her or what the deal was. But the doctor then like drew an X and then drew a line so that I would understand, oh, I need to sign something. So I signed it. And then the next thing I know, it's 14 days later. What happened is my oxygen sat at the time was, I think they said 68%. And to put that in a frame of reference, anytime you're oxygen saturation is 90% or lower, they put that nasal cannula or that hose on you. Why I was conscious, they have no idea. There was a lot of things will come into the story that was basically, we don't know how you did that. So they intubated me. I was diagnosed with ARDS, acquired respiratory distress syndrome. I was put into a medically induced coma, and they were hoovering out my lungs about every 20, 30 minutes because they were just filling up with fluid. ARDS is weird in the sense that it somehow signals the rest of your body to the other organ systems that, hey, if you want to check out, you can. So after my lungs shut down, my kidney shut down. And I blew up to about 450 pounds. So much so that I had what they call third spacing, where fluid builds up in between the tissues of your body. And it was so bad, I actually had blisters in my eyeballs. The fluid was just trying to find some place to go. And then with all that fluid overload, then my heart failed. The top of my heart, or the atria, failed. So with heart, lung, and kidney failure, it's kind of like, knocking on heaven's door. The funny thing is that I have had previous experiences with remote viewing or out-of-body experiences. And so while I was in my coma state, my consciousness was actually above my bed. If you could attach a camera to the head of my bed and then extend it up maybe about 8 feet, that's where my consciousness was. So I can pan and scan the entire room. And I was having fun with it, actually. The nurses were coming in and talking, and they were like, "Oh, this guy's a nursing student, and he's got his mom and his wife here," and they were trading backstories of kind of shift changes and things. And then my wife and my mother, who despised each other, were in the same room, but they were at the most opposite ends of the room they could possibly be. And so again, my consciousness is looking at this as like, you guys hate each other. You have to sit in the same room. This is kind of funny. I'm enjoying this. But when my wife's cousin's wife with stage 4 lung cancer came to my bedside to wish me goodbye, that's the first time I realized, oh, this is kind of serious. All right, well, maybe I need to pay attention. But little idiosyncrasies would come up later that I would call out to family, and they were just like, how do you know that? You were in a coma. But it's like my daughter was, I think, 15 at the time, and so she wanted to twist my hair up and put it in little barrettes. She wanted to paint my toenails. They were trying to debate what music I would like to listen to because they had read somewhere that hearing was still intact, or one of the first things to come back in a coma. So I remember them having that debate. I remember them saying that they decided on James Taylor to play for me. So I remember my mom making a comment about, I never realized how much hair he had growing in his ears. Something only a mother would say to you, So all these little things that I would not know being in a coma, but I did. So had that process. About 13 days later, they were able to back me off. The organs slowly came back online again. And, the peculiar thing is that they never discovered what made me sick. Nor did they discover what was it that actually helped me turn the corner. Because they threw the kitchen sink at me. And they were chasing down things like, again, so my diabetes doctor's husband was an infectious disease doc. And so because he was part of my story, he stayed involved. So it's like, well, he's got pneumonia because his lungs are flooding, but what's causing that? And they ran blood test, negative. Well, he's got some sort of a virus. No, he doesn't. Well, maybe it's a fungal infection. No, it isn't. So then they're chasing it down. Well, maybe it's Legionnaire's disease. I mean, they really were going for exotic stuff because none of the normal stuff was coming up, and it was never explained. What I did find interesting, though, was that about 3 or 4 weeks before the coma, I was having, a divorce was impending. And in my journal, I wrote, I wish I could just go to sleep, wake up, and this would all be over. So careful what you wish for, kids, because you may just get it. So I was extubated. I came back onto room air. My kidneys turned back on. My heart kind of got into synchronous rhythm again. So it looked like a blip on the radar. So they moved me to a step-down unit, and I'm lying there in bed, and I'm thinking, this sucks. This was as close as I could have probably gotten to a death state. And I didn't have a near-death experience because I'd read about them. And again, having had outer-body experiences as a remote viewer, I kind of thought it would be something like that, but I just didn't know. And I thought, God, this sucks. I mean, how can I get this close to death again? And me being me, I'd be like stepping on a banana peel and just fall into the other side. And oh crap, I didn't mean to go all the way. So as I'm lying there, just kind of drifting off to sleep, then it happened. And so on one hand, it doesn't make sense because I was out of harm's way, so much so that they had removed the devices that were keeping me alive. But on the other hand, maybe I've been astral projecting or remote viewing since I was 14 years old. And so maybe the membrane between the two spaces was perforated. I don't know. But I had the traditional stuff. I went through a white tunnel. I had a sensation of flying without air disturbance. I met my grandparents. I met patients who I'd worked with who had been deceased. I saw my childhood pet dog. So all of those like traditional things you see in near death. Then it took a curve on me because this was not in any of the books I read. I was in this white space and I saw something whiter than white. And there was nothing in there to determine whether this white thing was teeny tiny and right in front of my forehead, or if it was the size of a Mack truck and was a mile away, because there was nothing to judge distance. But it was something. And I said, what are you? And it came back at me, I'm everything. And I said, well, that's cool. And again, speaking over there is done in thought. I'm sure your audience already knows this, but in case someone stumbles across, I said, well, that's cool. And then all of a sudden it was just like right in front of me. And all I could see was this brighter than bright white light. And so I'm like just kind of staring at it. And all of a sudden this silver tendril came out and just kind of boop, hit me in the third eye. And it was like the paparazzi all started taking flash pictures of me because it just this flash of white. And I just felt like this data stream start. And once I kind of settled into it, then it was like, he's ready. And then another increased push. And then it was kind of like it went to kind of one of the spotlights you'd see at like a mall opening or a premiere or something like that. And then I accommodated to that data stream. And then it was like, okay, he's ready. And I turned around and instead of seeing God, Jesus, Kuan Yin, Buddha, whatever, I saw the comedian George Carlin. And the curious thing about that was that George Carlin was not dead. So now I have this whole Contact movie thing. I'm like, Jodie Foster, her father was deceased, but when she saw the aliens, they took on the representation of her father. And the rationale was, we want to show you somebody that you won't be threatened by because the message is important. So I didn't know George Carlin. I just knew of him. I watched him on TV, and he and I are very similar in the sense of, he said, I was Catholic until I reached the age of reason. And I was kind of in that tangent too. I went to Catholic grade school, high school, and college. But around my junior, senior year, I'm like, this is all kind of bull, but I'm going to play along just because I just don't know, you know? But I finally got to a point where I could look at him and he was like, here we are. I'm like, okay. He's like, come on, I got some cool shit I want to show you. And I'm like, all right. So he was like showing me how fractals represent the universe. And I know our time's limited here, but there was a download, and then there was another download, and it was all like on different subject matters with, you know, why am I here? And it was basically to course correct. Why am I on Earth? Well, because you're going to be the bridge between left brain and right brain thinking when it comes to metaphysics and all those things that kind of fall into transpersonal psychology. Like, okay, well, couldn't you have sent someone, you know, better qualified than me? And they're like, yeah, you've actually been doing this for several lifetimes, so you're qualified. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then the next scene I had in my head is I'm standing in the middle of a soccer pitch or a soccer field, and I'm looking around, and the stadium just goes up and up and up and up into the clouds. And I'm looking down at the crowd, and I'm seeing every race, every generation. It was like Central Casting had a sale for every costume they ever had. So I'm seeing togas, and I'm seeing zoot suits, and I'm seeing dresses, and everybody was there. And I'm seeing some things that aren't people. They looked like silver surfboards or opaque surfboards that just kind of glowed and just kind of pulsed. So all of this is in the audience, and I realized, holy shit, I'm standing in a Quidditch pitch from Harry Potter. And if you've ever seen the Harry Potter movies where they talk about the World Cup, you'll understand the stadium and how it goes up into the clouds and everything. So George texts me, he goes, hey, everybody, this is John. And the whole place goes, hi, John. And John is from Earth. And the whole place goes, ooh. And I'm like, why are you oohing? And immediately information comes back. Earth is hard. You don't go to Earth. You have to be selected to go to Earth because you've got physical places that exist. You've got energetic places that exist. And Earth is one of the few places where you can be both. But you also have duplicity. People will lie to your face and they'll smile and they'll be so convincing. And if you're not used to it, it'll throw you a curve. And the other thing that was shown to me was like, it's an amusement park in the sense that if you want to focus on a thing or have an experience of a thing, then that thing is there. So if I want to experience racism, there's plenty of racism rides. If you want to experience poverty, there's plenty of poverty rides. And so you can basically pick and choose your own adventure depending upon what you focus on. And I'm like, okay, so in my mind, it's kind of like you're over here in heaven or Akashic Records or, you know, whatever, you know, noun you want to give it. But you do all your study over there, but you don't actually get to deploy it until you're in the laboratory. And if you've advanced far enough, the laboratory can be Earth. So it's like I can read about baking a cake, but then I could try to bake one and burn my kitchen to the ground. And welcome to Earth. You just had that experience. So I'm like, okay, all right, I think I get it. And then it was like, I want to go exploring. And it's like, nope, you can't explore. You've got to go back. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go back. This place is much cooler than back there. They're like, nah, you got to go back. And I'm like, why do I have to go back? And again, they talk in energy. So I have to convert that into English words. And the best I can come up with is spiritual paramedic. And again, that kind of makes sense to me in what was said earlier in that you need to be the bridge between left brain and right brain thinkers in the scope of metaphysics. So my day job, I'm a clinical data scientist. I'm an oncology nurse by training. I've been building databases for half a decade. I was a platform member of IBM Watson Health. So AI, machine learning, quantum computing, I had my fingers in all of that. But yet here I am, remote viewing, astral projection, having near-death experiences, chasing ghosts, past life regression. Why all this corpus of knowledge that should be so woo-woo in a meat suit that's running around playing clinical data scientist? So it seems that both sides of those pillars have been building over time of he's a smart cat and he's got his logic, but we're going to give him all this experiential knowledge so that he can be that bridge back and forth. And so that's basically what I've been doing and talking about since 2011 when, my mom's passing basically kicked my butt and said, okay, get moving.